The City Council of the City of Gun Barrel City, Texas will meet in a special meeting in City Hall Council Chambers located at 1716 West Main Street in Gun Barrel City, Texas on Monday, November 29th at 3 p.m. Roll call from my left, please.
Y'all's here.
Evans here.
LaRue here.
Mullins here.
Wilster here.
We have a quorum. Citizens' comments limited to 3 minutes. The purpose of this item is to allow citizens an opportunity to address the City Council on items that are listed on the agenda or issues that are not listed on the agenda. Any person desiring to make a public comment must first be recognized by the presiding officer and sign in at the podium with their name and address at least 10 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Individual citizen comments are limited to 3 minutes. The presiding officer may ask the citizen to hold their comment on an agenda item until that agenda item is reached. The City Council has no obligation to respond in any manner to comments or questions from the public. Any response from a member of the City Council to non-agenda comments is limited to a statement of specific factual information and recital of existing policy or direction to staff for follow-up. We do have a citizen's comment from Ms. Stacy Flowers. If you would please come to the podium.
Hello, I'm Stacy Flowers. My address is 124 East Bar H Drive in Gun Barrel City. I'm not going to address the issue of the cost since the shelter representatives are here to clear up the misunderstanding and how it's calculated. I do want to address Mayor Skane's statement at the last council meeting that the cost has gone up 88% since 2018. There's a perfectly good reason why it has gone up. I don't know if the new members of the council are aware, but in 2019, when the shelter agreement came up for renewal, the residents of Gun Barrel City filled City Hall and fought tirelessly to use the Humane Society of Cedar Creek Lake instead of the shelter in Athens. At that time, the Athens shelter was not doing well with adoptions, and most of the animals that went there were being euthanized. No money was spent on shots, spay and neuter, or getting them adopted. This is why the cost to use the Athens shelter was so low. Since the Humane Society works tirelessly and endlessly hard to get the animals vetted, spay and neutered, and adopted, the cost is a lot more. Fortunately, at the same time, the Henderson County Commissioners voted to allow the board running the Humane Society of Cedar Creek Lake take over managing the shelter in Athens, which is now the Athens Animal Rescue, and they have done an incredible job of getting the dogs adopted and turned that shelter around. It seems like when it comes to Gun Barrel City properly funding the shelter and taking care of the animals, it has always been a battle for years. Here are a few examples. Selecting the shelter that would provide better services to save the lives. Gun Barrel City previously refused to pay the proper funding, and fortunately, 2 private citizens stepped up and paid the additional $12,000 difference. Mayor Skanes and former Councilman Wyrick went to Commissioner's Court trying to convince them not to let the Humane Society of Cedar Creek Lake take over the Athens shelter. Mayor Skanes tried to go into contract with the Athens shelter at the same time for $5,000 for quarantine services and for Gun Barrel City staff to determine which dogs they deemed adoptable to go to Humane Society of Cedar Creek Lake to be adopted, and the others would be sent to the Athens shelter to be euthanized. This was an attempt to keep the numbers down that went to Humane Society of Cedar Creek Lake. The only mention of this during the city council meeting when the $5,000 was voted on was that it was to be used for quarantine services. Nothing else was mentioned with the rest of the city council members present or for the Gun Barrel City citizens to be aware of. The only reason I knew it was because I had an email from Mayor Skanes stating what the city had planned to do. I feel this was deceptive to the residents of Gun Barrel City. Thankfully, Henderson County would not go into agreement with Gun Barrel City at that time because they were in the process of turning over the management of the Athens shelter to the Humane Society of Cedar Creek Lake representatives. Now Mayor Skanes vetoes City Council's approved vote to provide the additional emergency funding. It was supposedly just a vote on the amendment to the contract. Now it's because there's apparently issues to the cost.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Of course.
Item 1A, discuss and/or take action to finalize services with the Humane Society of Cedar Creek Lake. With us today, Council, we have Ms. Teresa Cryer and Ms. Lynette Ainsworth to speak on behalf of the council. On behalf of the Humane Services. Before we get started with that, there's been a lot of misinformation that's been put out about this subject, so I'm going to try to clarify some of it. as witnessed just from the previous commenter. Yes, we did go to Henderson County for $5,000 for quarantine and for after-hour services, because we have to be at the Humane Society in Toole by 3 o'clock or 3:30, I can't remember which it is now. But I kind of just wanted to go through a little bit of a recap of what brought us here today. We received a request from the Humane Society for an additional 28% in our monthly payment on September 29th. Council voted in our first meeting after that time to approve that. However, there was no amended contract offered at that time for us to actually approve, and we can't just start paying an additional fee that is not in our contract. If we do that when we get audited, which we're audited every single year, we pay for an audit service to come in. And if we start showing that we're paying more money than what our contract allows, then staff has questions to have to answer. We have to go back and pull minutes, and it's just not a clean transaction. So I had originally vetoed it. That is absolutely correct, pending us getting a amended contract, which we did eventually receive one. However, I won't even go there. We did receive one. However, before we received one, the papers were notified that I vetoed it by the Humane Society, like I had done something underhanded with them, and I didn't really appreciate that very much. When the Humane Society responded back with the information, we had asked that some questions be answered. It was brought up at that point in time that we don't pay our fair share, and that our fair share would be 3 times what we're currently paying, which was, I think, around $48,000, if I remember right, so a little bit more than that. So that brought me to looking at that, thinking, well, what are we getting for our increase? And so I decided to ask council to look at a separate amendment other than the one that the Humane Society provided. And the principal thing that I would like out of that is more time with Humane Society, meaning that if we're going to increase our payment $350 a month, I mean, we're just starting the second year of a 2-year contract for a set fee, and now that fee has gone up 28%. So I would like to add another year to this contract and hopefully not come up again to break the contract again. Now, that is where I'm at. Ms. Ainsworth, did you want to speak before Ms. Cryer, or Ms. Cryer first? It doesn't make me any difference.
And again, I'm Lynette Ainsworth. I'm the board president of the Humane Society of Cedar Creek Lake. I would like to address some of those questions that came up. So
Thank you.
I'm going to try to get through as quick as I can, but the 3 minutes, if you guys...
No, you have all day.
Okay, because I do want to address
Since
everything.
you and Ms. Cryer are on the board, y'all are not in a 3-minute time frame.
Okay, thank you very much then. I won't rush through this. Anyway, myself and our board members, we're here today to clarify information that was brought up during the last council meeting and answer those additional questions that came up after our first October council meeting that we all did attend. Our board members are all volunteers, and most of us have a professional and technical background that allow us to help the shelter when it comes to proper funding, like having a CPA, Teresa Cryer. Also, we have an attorney on our board, Kathleen Crouch, and other professionals who oversee the well-being of the shelter. But most important, we have a passion to make sure that we care for our animals, and also you have to have the proper funding to do that. We all work hard with our animal life-saving programs. Our initial request at the October council meeting was to help the shelter with emergency funds due to the pandemic. Because the shelter expenses were up in budget and payroll, medical, and animal care, these funds were requested on an additional $350 a month or $4,200 a year for Gun Barrel through the period of October of '22 only. I don't think any of us would have predicted the pandemic would still be affecting businesses today. Our CPA, Teresa Cryer, will try to review some information from our financial statement. Sending a copy, as you requested, doesn't allow appropriate time for questions and reviewing, so therefore, we encouraged a meeting with her. During the last council, comments were made by council regarding fair share and pay per animal basis on what other cities pay versus what Gun Barrel pays. There was some correct information, but also incorrect information that I hope to clarify, that we base our rates on with all cities and counties. It was also brought up that we would not review what other cities or counties pay. Under our attorney's advice, and basically the right thing, it's not appropriate to review other counties and cities' contract information. That is at the discretion of those cities and counties to review their information. But however, I'm going to review the rates, how they're set, and review where Gun Barrel compares to those other cities. I also have a handout, which I'm assuming that you guys do have, but I do want to give you a couple handouts. One I'm going to start with. There's 7 copies of the animal intake, which I know you guys have. Would you like another copy of that today so that we can kind of follow along, so you see exactly what that amount is per? Thank you, Kirsten.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we look at our budget at the end of the year, and then we compare what % of cities and counties use our service. There are 10 cities, and you can see from the handout, there's 10 cities. There's also 3 counties, County of Kaufman, Henderson County, and we just recently added Van Zant County. We only allow some cities to pay per animal brought in based on their small % of animal intake to the shelter. For example, if you look at your list, the city of Trinidad, the city of Kemp, only bring in about 10 animals to date, where larger cities like Gun Barrel, who have brought in 294 animals to date. Expected to be about 354 total for the end of the year. As we know, our community is growing, and so do the animal population. So the larger % of animal intake is provided on a monthly contract basis versus the per animal. We currently have the counties and 3 of those cities on a monthly contract based on their animal intake. Those 3 are Gun Barrel, Maybank, and the city of Kaufman. The city of Kaufman and Maybank each bring in close to 10% of the animal intake. The city of Kaufman is 186, as you will see, Maybank 190, and Gun Barrel brings in 15% at 354, which makes them the largest city animal intake. The next one is that is even close, is the city of Toole at 3.66%. So to address what other cities pay versus Gun Barrel, if we added the 350 per month that we've asked for, that would put Gun Barrel paying less than those other 2 cities. And if you want, again, check with their information, you're welcome to do that.
Excuse me, you're saying that Gun Barrel would be, with the additional,
Would be paying less than those 2 other cities based on their contract.
other than Maybank and,
Maybank and the city of Kaufman.
Maybank is paying you, I don't have that. I thought I did. Okay. They're paying you on a monthly contract, are they not?
That's correct, yes.
About $1,100 a month?
Based on, I've got it in here somewhere. But again, you know, that's not my place to go into the individual contracts with the cities. But you want to verify that, but based on my information.
We did.
Okay, and I think you made a comment that the city of Kaufman last time was on an animal per basis, and they're not. So.
I didn't say they were on it. I just
Okay.
gave the number of, by the number of animals they had.
And they are paying a lot more than Gun Barrel per month.
And they're
About
not
twice
in,
as much.
that may be slightly. I mean, I'm going to have to disagree, Lynette, because the city of Kaufman is paying you from the city of Kaufman. Gun Barrel is paying you from the city of Gun Barrel as well as from Henderson County, because our citizens do pay a property tax to Henderson County. And Henderson County pays you $300 and some odd thousand a year for the 2 shelters. So our citizens are double dipped, whereas the citizens in Kaufman County, the citizens in Maybank, they're not. They're paying from their general fund out of their city. So I think it's a little unfair to say that that they're paying more, because, you know, I don't know what percentage of the sales, or excuse me, percentage of property tax from Gun Barrel City goes to Henderson County, but we are the second largest city in the county. So get to assume it's a considerable amount of, a good amount of money that goes into that county budget that they're paying you part of that 300, and I think, is it 360,000 that Henderson County pays you?
That's counting what that 360 is counting what the city of Athens is paying.
Okay.
Now, the Henderson County is paying the Athens shelter very appropriately. That is a correct statement. And we allow them to balance the animals between Athens and HSCCL so that we don't have to put animals down because of one's overcrowded. So we allow the, Henderson County, because that was also brought up in one of your meetings, that Henderson County pays the tool shelter a low amount.
Yes.
And that is correct because they fund,
$20,000, if I remember
they're
right.
solely funding the other shelter of Athens when we took them over. So that was our agreement, and we balanced that out,
Okay.
okay?
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I go ahead and finish, and I may be able to
It's
answer?
germane to the point.
Oh, okay.
If I can finish, then I can open up for some questions. Because that was part of what I was going to explain a little bit in my conversation about what each one pays. So again, if I look at the Henderson County, and that was kind of a comment, I guess I'm jumping ahead with what your question was, but we do get a amount for both the Henderson County supplements, basically, so to speak. So I'm going to look here and show you or explain something. So I'm looking at the city of Kaufman, city of Gun Barrel and Maybank, Kaufman County, Henderson County. Those are on contracts, and that ranges from $55 if you were to base it on the per animal, and as I mentioned, we don't do that, and there's several reasons why we don't do that. But if you take those, Gun Barrel would actually be with this increase at $55 an animal, and of course, it cost us about $125 just to care for that animal, and a high of over $200 an animal, and then the highest city is $130. So that's the information based on what they give us on a monthly contract without divulging who's got what. So I wanted to make note of that. I would also like to kind of continue on with the addendum that you guys brought up compared to what our addendum was, if I may address that.
To be clear, that was one that I prepared, or had the attorney prepare, and council did not vote one way or the other on that one, so that's on me.
So you don't want me to review that?
Oh, go right ahead.
Okay.
Yes, I do. I just want to let you know that where it came from.
Okay. And I had, as I mentioned, our attorney prepared our addendum. And any contracts we also have, we have our attorney look at those, and we try to be fair and consistent. So to change the language, that was another reason I wanted to make a point tonight, is that we don't want to change our contract language because, one, again, our attorney says keep things consistent. So there were a couple things in there about the society refusing a request by the citizens of Gun Barrel to render animals to society. I want to make a point with that. I know that has been brought up, and only when we're at full capacity do we let a owner surrender know that we're not accepting animals at the current time due to space, because we don't want to take that animal in and put that animal down. So we ask that individual to get back with us, and sometimes we put them on a wait list. But we now partner, as you guys know, with the ASPCA Transport. We also have volunteers who provide transport. We can't adopt enough animals in our community, so we transport those animals out. Once we have space, then we allow that owner surrender to bring their animals in. So I wanted to make note, that's why we do not want to change that contract language, because we, and many times, ask them to hold on to the animal until we have space, and then we also recommend other rescue organizations that they can reach out to hopefully get that animal a home, basically waiting until we have space. So that's the reason why we don't accept everything at one time. So Teresa will go into a little bit more about, you guys also talked about the paper that we provided with you was part of our budget. And as I said before too, we did not want to just give you a copy of that because it takes a little time to explain the information that's in a profit and loss statement. But tonight we have the opportunity, if you would allow, that I'll give you a copy of that, and Teresa Cryer can explain to you guys about the financials to show you why we need what we need.
Love to have it.
Okay. So you're up.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do y'all want to ask me any additional questions, or do you want to wait till after the financial statements?
I'm going to let Mr. Yalls ask his question, and then I have one as well. Mr.
Okay.
Yalls?
Thank you. Regarding the topic that was being discussed at the time, again, without getting into any specific contracts that y'all have with other cities, what other cities, or are there any other cities that citizens within the municipality are paying property taxes that go to the county that are then being allocated to HSCCL, are also paying through city revenue as well, like Gun Barrel is? Whereas in this city, anyone that pays property taxes to Henderson County, a portion of that property taxes is being used to support both the Athens and the Tool shelters. What other cities do y'all have that y'all service that are paying, or citizens are paying both ways?
Well, I just mentioned to you the cities that we have contracts with, so I guess you can answer that one yourself
I
based on...
don't think that answers the question, actually. I'll use an example like, let's say Maybank. If the city of Maybank pays a fee for the use of the facilities in Tool, do the citizens in Maybank also pay a property tax to Kaufman County? And are y'all then receiving property tax, or excuse me, tax revenue from Kaufman to also cover the cost of running the shelter from the county in Kaufman County?
I think you know the answer to that is that
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Well, I don't know who pays property taxes, so, you know, I don't have a list of that. I'm sure you do.
maybe I should be more clear. Anyone that owns a piece of property in any county in Texas pays some tax to the county no matter what. So I think if we start with the knowledge that there isn't a county in the state of Texas that doesn't collect property tax, that'll kind of get us down the road. Secondly, and again, I don't want to be argumentative, I want to be constructive, and what I'm saying is, I don't want you to insist that I know something I don't know. I'm asking because I don't know.
What does taxes have anything to do with what we're asking for?
It has to do with the money being used to pay to fund the shelter. Where is it coming from? That's the question I'm asking.
Okay? And I've explained, we don't
Excuse
get
me,
to...
Ms. Snelling, we
So-
can only hear her.
And that
Be
may be a
quiet.
question to you, Teresa.
I don't mind who answers it. I insist. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I really do want to know the answer because people have asked me this question.
But I don't understand what it has to do with what we're asking for, whether someone
I can
pays
explain it.
taxes.
I can explain the
Okay,
reason.
then, okay.
It comes down to this. As a taxpayer, I'll use myself as the example since I am a Gun Barrel City resident. I pay county taxes to Henderson County and also to TVCC College District. I also pay Maybank ISD taxes, which go through Kaufman. A portion of the tax money that I, as a citizen of Gun Barrel, pay to Henderson County are among the funds that are used by the county to support both the Tool and the Athens animal shelters, which I believe is an appropriate use of the money. I'm not disagreeing with that. So for the record, before anyone goes on next door and has a comment that suggests that I don't want to support them, I am saying you are wrong. To the point, though, I've already paid some monies as part of my property taxes, as have every other property owner in Gun Barrel City, to the county of Henderson. And then the city of Gun Barrel is also paying for the same service. My question is, are there any other cities that y'all service where y'all are being funded both by the county and the city for the same service?
So, yeah.
All of the property taxes go into the big fund in Texas, and then they're dispersed out to the counties, and then they spend it however they see fit, whether it's to support the shelter or whatever else.
Excuse me, Ms. Pryor, could you go over to the microphone, please, so we can pick it up? Thank you very much. Lynette, I do have another question for you when she finishes.
Okay. I'm Teresa Cryer. My address is 429 North Gun Barrel Lane, Suite A, Gun Barrel City, Texas. That's my business. And what I was saying is that, yes, property taxes are collected by the county tax assessor, or I guess it's the county appraisal district assesses them, and then they collect them by the county. And you're right. There is money that everybody that owns a piece of property, yes, you do pay property taxes into that fund, and then the counties disperse it as they see fit. And so we do get money from Henderson County and from Kaufman County and coming up from Van Zandt County. But the cities within there, and of course, those are the biggest users of not Van Zandt right now because it's new, but they are the biggest ones that use the shelter. But we also have to, the only other way we could do it, I don't even know how you would do it unless we do it the way we do. Because the sheet that Lynette gave you, that tells you the percentage of the shelter that is used by each jurisdiction. And we come up with our budget at the end of the year, not the income, the budget, and then everyone pays their percentage based on the number of animals that they have put in the year before or brought to the shelter. And so, I don't know how you would do it. Like, as the account said, 294 animals were brought in year-to-date by Gun Barrel City. So what do? Do you take that and add it into, I guess, Henderson County, and then start dividing it out that way? I'm not really sure how you would go about doing that. I understand your question, but if you want to have a shelter that does, provides the services that it provides, we have to have some way to support it. And I've actually am the longest member of this board, and go back to 11 years now, and I've seen it go up and down, and I actually, at one point, thought it was going to close. And then Lynette came on board and some other people, and we have worked really hard to get it to where it is now. And I think some of y'all may have went out there and saw it, and I'm very proud of it. I can't go out there because I'm one of those people that will bring everybody home with me, and I've got 2 as it is. So I'm not saying that your question isn't valid. It is, but I don't know how you would incorporate that into what we do and how we, come up with who pays what.
I appreciate your feedback on it. Just to give you some piece that what I'm getting at is, and again, I think you'll know where I'm going with this. The question that's been asked of me by members of the city is just asking, what is our fair share and how is it arrived at? And one of the questions that was specific and germane to that was, if people are paying property taxes that go to the county and the county is also kicking in part of the funding for the Humane Society, why then are they also being asked to kick in from the city? And I want to be able to give them a good answer other than just to suggest you already know the answer. I think if I said that to someone, it would come across as argumentative and defensive, and it might suggest to them that I don't want them to know the answer, and I absolutely refuse to use that type of language. When someone asks a question like that, I believe it's because they genuinely want to know and they're seeking to understand, so that when they feel as though they're part of the decision that they really feel strongly about.
Okay.
Thank you again for your answer. I
very
appreciate you taking the time.
Ms.
very
Cryer?
Yes. Did someone say my name?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I guess I've got just a few questions here. Do you know what the cost is per animal in total? Do you have that broken down?
Well, I think Lynette gave the amount of $125 per animal. And one of the things that we try very, very hard to do is to not euthanize just for space. And of course, that increases your food costs, your medical cost, and your labor, which is where we're over in this budget that was just given to you, budget to actual. And, that was one of the things at the Athens shelter, because you took an animal in there, it was well known that you didn't even wait the 72 hours, which you're supposed to wait, until you actually owned that animal. Some of them were euthanized immediately. And so over the past 11 years, we've gone all over the gambit, of how to do this fairly and how to support a shelter that everyone can be proud of, and we do our best. Like Lynette was saying, with the ASPC transports, there's all kinds of transports that we've done. In fact, some of the people have driven, some of the volunteers have actually driven animals to New Mexico and all over, trying to do this. And
I understand. So let me keep going down this rabbit hole for just a little bit. And Richard, this might help answer your question as well. So $125 per animal. The average city is paying around $55 per animal. So the rest of that money is probably coming from the counties. Is that what I would understand from that?
the counties pay a good portion
Yeah,
of it.
the counties are
yes.
paying a good portion.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, and Lynette, you did say 125 to care for with a high of $200 per animal. How long time period is that for, that $200 or the 125, whichever? 1 to 2 months is the average. 1 to 2 months? Okay. Okay,
Sir, I have a comment.
certainly.
I was one of two members who took a tour of the facility last week, and I'd like to thank the staff for the outstanding job you did in showing us around and the patience and I'm sure some of our dumb questions. It was a very good tour. I learned a lot, and I want to thank them for that. I think that what we're wrestling with there a little bit is that the fair share is one item. When you look at a county budget and you say how much goes back to a certain program, I'm sure there's somebody out there with a number. I'd have to guess that what comes back to this shelter is a very infinitesimal small amount, whatever the property tax is. The council voted unanimously to approve an increase for the shelter at our last meeting. And now before us today, we have your amendment, and we have a document prepared by the city attorney and the mayor, which is an amendment to our contract. My question in general to you is, which of these can you support? Which one do you want to see passed? Give us some direction. You're going to get the money either way.
The addendum that we supplied to you guys, which is basically stating the increase until October of 2022, that was basically what we're asking for, which again is just an emergency funding to get us to that point. That's what and our attorney helped us draw that addendum up, and if we can get that signed, then that's the one that we're willing to present and accept. But the other, as I mentioned, is the reason why we don't accept the other addendum that was brought up.
Can you give us any information or thoughts about, we keep hearing that Kaufman is preparing or building a facility. How will that impact us?
That's going to impact all of us. And we've actually, for the last year, Teresa Cryer and myself have been looking at that and realize that we're going to have to cut back on staffing because we'll have less animals. So we do look at a 2022 budget. We call it a working budget that we're going to have to work through. So it impacts all of us. And I've also told Henderson County that we in this community cannot just have one shelter. So shutting that shelter down when Kaufman goes, does their own thing is not an option for us. So we're going to have to figure that out. And I think I'm pretty optimistic that we'll come up with a solution that we'll be able to continue different things and fund it properly.
Well, one reason I support only through the FY22 budget amendment is that projecting out to FY23, we really don't know what's going to happen. And we're preparing a budget here to give you additional money for that period of time. It may well be that at that period of time you came back with everything you've analyzed with Kaufman. You may say, we have to have even more money. We don't know. But that's why I think that we voted 5-0 for the amendment. That's what I would still support. But it's good to know that you all would like to see that rather than the other document. That way they'll give us some direction on how we should proceed. Thank you.
Okay.
So we've talked a little bit about the cost per animal, and the time frame that you're keeping the animals is 1 to 2 months. Our contract that we currently have, and contracts have everything in them that we should abide by. One of the things that I asked for in the other amendment was that when y'all do need changes, that you come to us when we're in the middle of our budget year, when we're doing our budget for the next year, which around May would be very good for us because our year runs October to September. So that's one of the other things that I did ask for. However, in the agreement that we've signed, both of us signed and your attorney prepared, one of the reasons that I went to Henderson County before that shelter was taken over by y'all and asked if we could pay them the $5,000 is because, one, y'all do not, or at that time you did not, I assume you still don't, handle quarantine, but also you charge us a $20 fee if we bring an animal out at 3:30 in the afternoon. So that $5,000, we would have definitely done well with that if they would have honored their contract, which actually was a binding contract, but I won't get into that. In your contract, though, it states that the animals delivered to Society Shelter by the city or its agents will be impounded for a redemption period of 73 hours. After the passage of the redemption period, Society is at sole discretion in accordance with state law and agreement to do what you want to with the animals. We no longer have a say-so, but you're asking us to pay for 1 or 2 months. So I do have a little bit of concern with that because we have I don't want any say-so, but we're paying for humane service of animals, which the state law stipulates what humane service of those animals are. Your business model goes well above and beyond that, and I'm thankful that y'all do. I really am. I've got a rescue animal. I know Richard has one. I know Ann's got a pet. But we're asking our citizens in a city that has no ad valorem tax, we just live off of our sales tax mostly, to pony up for another month or 2 of care for the animals. And that is where my concern comes in. It's not that, as Ms. Flowers has said, that I don't like animals and, that I'm against animals. That is absolutely just not true. It's the fact that we have a contract that says 73 hours and it's yours. But yet we go on beyond that. We go on a month or so longer beyond that. And that is where, we get into trouble for me when I look at the contract. So
That language allows the shelter the authority, if we have an injured or sick animal, and in some cases we do have to do the humane thing and put the animal down after that 72-hour period. Our track record will show that we do everything possible to save those animals, and we are, as we said, we're proud of that track record. Now,
and I'm certainly not I'm not disputing that y'all have that track record.
and we have not, ever since we've been overseeing the shelter, we've not ever come back and said during the middle of a contract to change things. Only because of the pandemic is the reason that we're changing. We waited till, and to your point, we certainly understand that your budget in May is a date that we all know. We actually, May went by and we were doing okay. And I think everybody realized what's happening in our world, that labor costs and all those things changed within a 3-month period. That's the last thing I want to do, is to have to go to all these cities and the counties and ask for more money. That's the last thing that I wanted to do. And I kept holding off until I had to take a $20,000 fundraiser check and pay for payroll. And that broke my heart. And I said then, we've got to go back to the cities and the counties to ask to help us to get through this. And so to your point, Mayor Skanes, that definitely, as we look through the next contract period, that will happen ahead of time.
Thank you.
Try to foresee that.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that with COVID, all businesses have been strapped. But as a council, if a contractor who's building a street and says, hey, we'll do that road for $1 million, and he comes back when he gets halfway through the process, says, sorry, it's going to be $2 million, that's hard for us to, and he can say the same thing. Due to COVID, we had to pay more money, or whatever the case may be. And the same with us, we have to pay more money. We can't even hire police officers right now because we're not paying enough to get good applicants. In fact, I'm not even sure we're getting any applicants.
We're on the same boat.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat. So it's, I do appreciate what you do. I do appreciate the Humane Society. I just, 48,000 is not going to happen as long as I'm mayor.
We never asked for the 48,000.
But that is what you said is our fair share.
We said that was how we looked at that percent based on the salary.
When that's the part that worries me, because.
But we never said,
You've said,
Mayor Skanes, we never said we wanted the 48,000.
no, ma'am, you said it as our fair share.
That's correct. That is
That's what you said.
that is the fair share based on
And
those.
that's the figure I know that you're headed towards. So that is what worries me no end, is that sooner or later, you're going to come at us with another increase and another increase until you get to that number that you feel is our fair share. And that is troublesome for me as mayor. I don't have a vote, okay? I don't have a vote. If we have a contract and we haven't been under the contract and the council approves it, I will not veto that because it will be in proper order. Last time it was not in proper order, which is the only reason I vetoed it, because it wasn't in proper order. But as we uncovered more questions came up. So I'll leave it open to any other questions from council.
Ma'am, since the discussion of fair share has come up, what is y'all's definition of fair share?
Well, as we kind of explained a little bit that Teresa talked about, was taking that budget and dividing that out by the percent. And then we look at the income that we get from adoptions, and that's where we end up taking the fair share of the 48,000. Not only 48,000 is a fair share for Gun Barrel, but that also is a higher amount for the other cities that are not paying that amount. The counties that we keep referring to, they do pay more than the cities, and they do pay their fair share. But the other cities, we have, in the last few years, accommodated the city of Maybank, for example, and the city of Gun Barrel to not pay or ask for that full amount, because we know that that is a hardship, that $48,000.
Richard, before you continue, I need to interject one thing real quick, if I may. Mr. Foster made comment that Henderson County voted to increase your contract, increase your amount. And I know that other cities have done the same, but didn't Henderson County give you 2 months is what they gave you until they review their budget? Is that right? $3,000?
I'm in talks with the attorney, and we have another review with them, so.
But that's what it was initially.
That was for the 2 months until they go into January.
Budget season,
So we
right.
will
And
talking
Tool,
about that,
Tool
yes.
gave you, which is you're in the city of Tool, so they're the ones who are the proper entity, along with Henderson County, to help you with the COVID issues, because that is what federal monies were given to those entities to help their local businesses. They gave you $5,000, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that was the city of Kaufman that gave us the $5,000.
What did City of Tool?
And the city of Tool just recently, we have not received that, but that was based on y'all's comment, and I do appreciate that. We didn't realize that those cities could give us those funds, so we do have, and I believe it's around $10,000, I'm not exactly sure, that they said that they would allocate for us because we are in the, well, we're not really in the city of Tool, but the shelter is located.
You have a Tool address.
Yes,
so-
we have a Tool
And they can help you if you've got a Tool address, so, okay.
So we do have a little bit of help there, too.
That's
So
good. That's good.
It is good to see.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Yawls, I interrupted you, and I do apologize for that.
Not a problem. Ma'am, the discussion, just to go backwards a little bit, there was a discussion regarding quarantine services. Does the Tool location currently offer quarantine services?
No, we actually are waiting on a bid from Wilson Fence, who's been out. So we've approved that. We're just in the process of waiting for one of the contractors to put that in, to provide that.
And I do remember that this was something that y'all were discussing when I was out there visiting the last time, that was a project y'all were working on, and I appreciate that y'all have stayed true to that. In simple terms, for anyone who may be listening, what is the function of a quarantine area? And again, nothing complicated, but in the simplest terms, what is the definition of quarantining service and why is it necessary?
I'll try to answer that because I'm not close enough to that. Our manager probably could answer that a little bit better, but
If somebody else would be better too, I'd be good with that.
so I'll say that it's a place for an animal that's aggressive or has bitten someone, to place that animal in a secure location that's not where the public can get to.
Thank you, and I think that's the understanding that I've had of what the definition was as well. Given that the Tool facility doesn't offer it, and for obvious reasons, I don't think it's any secret, it's a funding issue. You have to have the money to build the quarantine area, and that's obviously a concern that we're discussing today as well. But to the point of having it, y'all don't have one, which is reasonable. It's not something that was needed in the past, or it just didn't happen. What would a city who contracts with Henderson or with Tool do with an animal that's required to be quarantined, given that, and again, it's no fault of anyone, but if y'all don't offer that service, what would a city have to do with an animal that needed quarantining when y'all don't have that service available? What would be the responsible thing to do?
We refer that person to one of the local vets that has a quarantine area.
Any ideas? And again, not asking for an exact number, just any idea whatsoever what that costs per day or how they charge for that service?
No, it's Lisa Jones is one of the vets. I'm looking over at my manager. I think still takes care of that. With a 58 a day? Okay.
I appreciate that.
$50 a day, thank you. Yeah,
It was
$50
more
a
specific
day.
than I was expecting, so thank you. To that point, would it be irresponsible for a city to take an animal to another facility that offered quarantine facilities if they existed and that option wasn't available? Would it be responsible to take that animal to another quarantining facility if that opportunity wasn't available?
If it's not available,
If it were not available?
well, I would say take it to whatever else is available, yeah.
So just for clarity, for the sake of clearing up this point, discussion was had previous in this discussion today, or in this conversation today with another individual, that the city of Gunbarrel contracting with the Athens shelter specifically for the sake of having quarantining services available at a moment's notice was somehow misleading or underhanded. In your own opinion, is there anything misleading or underhanding about contracting with another city, with another county's humane society or another service for that service?
As far as, I don't want to answer your question based on the way
What you
you're
know.
proposing it, but my point is that the Athens does have a quarantine area, and we don't want to bring animals over there because, as we know, the animals are limited and space is limited at both shelters. But I think maybe answering your question, probably within the next month, we will have a quarantine area because we're that close from getting we've already agreed with the contractor, Wilson Fence Company, to add what we need. So I would think within the next month we will have that. In the meantime, I would think we do have other recommendations to bring that animal off the street and do the right thing.
Given that this is a backwards-looking question, in the past, when Gun Barrel sought to seek a contract with the Athens shelter, was there some risk or concern that a quarantined animal would be euthanized in some way? Was that a concern that it would happen during the quarantine process?
The Athens shelter at that time was definitely putting down majority of the animals.
Including quarantined animals?
Well, there's certain regulations that they have to abide by, and I can't answer what that agreement is with the county or the city that brought that animal in. So there are some restrictions that I can't specifically tell you about.
If I told you that I had, from word of the previous manager, that facility absolutely had not put down not even one quarantined animal during the period of quarantine, would you be surprised that that was the fact, that they had not done that, not one time?
I don't know, again, what they did over there, but I know things were not good until we took over.
Specifically regarding quarantined animals that were being held for the sake of a quarantine, as your example, maybe because they bit someone.
So I can't answer what Athens did at that time.
I'm sorry, does someone else have another question? We were in the middle of a discussion. That would be great. If somebody else has some more information on the topic, I'd love to hear it.
Jennifer is the director of the Athens shelter now.
Thank you.
Hello,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
Jennifer Miller. I'm at 515 Hillcrest in Malakoff, Texas. In our quarantine, we are obligated to keep them 10 days before we can do anything. There's a 10-day clause where we have to hold them whether they're aggressive or not. They've bitten. We have to have them 10 days before we make our decisions. The owners can come and reclaim after the 10 days, or they sign them over to us.
To your knowledge, there's been no instance where any quarantined animal's been euthanized during that quarantine period while you've been there?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
And again,
I've
I
been there
don't
for
want to
quite
put you
some
on the spot, so if the question is coming across that way, tell me what you want me to hear. I want to hear your answer, whatever it is.
time. No, not at all.
Is there any evidence or any indication that any quarantined animals prior to you being the facility manager there were being euthanized while they were being quarantined?
No, sir.
That's, okay, and that's kind of what I was
always
getting at,
been
is
a-
I have no evidence that that happened. The reason why I'm bringing that up, and I appreciate your giving your, again, whatever your feedback is, I take it at your word. The reason why I'm bringing that up is there's a suggestion that the facility over there was doing something with quarantined animals. I wanted to know where it was coming from, because I can't find anyone, past or present, who was responsible for animals at that facility who could share with me that even one quarantined animal was put down. But Ms. Flowers has insisted that the city of Gun Barrel's attempt to seek emergency shelter for a quarantine process for an animal was somehow misleading or unethical or inappropriate. I just can't find any evidence of it.
Am I allowed to clear up my statement?
I'm sorry.
That's not what I said.
Ms. Cryer, if I could.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm going to take some of my notes, and then I would like Teresa Cryer to spend a few minutes going through the budget with you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cryer, I had a couple of questions on the budget.
Okay.
Salaries and wages, how many employees are there? Does that include?
Pardon me?
How many employees are employed?
At the shelter?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know. 10.
I'm sorry?
We have 10 now.
10, okay.
Is that full or part-time?
4 full-time.
And then the other question I had, and this is probably a really stupid question on my part, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I'm of that school of thought. I don't see any, oh, never mind, I answered my own question. Well, actually, I do not see anything where your income
Well,
on
would you
mileage.
like for me to go through it briefly?
That's okay. Yes, please, go ahead. I think I
Okay,
answered my
if you look
question.
on page 1, and you'll come, and it tells you the different categories of where the sources of income are. And like adoption fees, the animal control, contributions, and miscellaneous. And you can see that our budget was $366,650 for the year, and we went over budget to $396,712, which gave us an over in income of $30,061. And you can see how it breaks down up through there. It's mostly under the contributions, because if you look at animal intake, it's just a $2,800 difference. Okay, if you look at the next line, where it says total expenses, we actually budgeted, and this is year-to-date, October 31st. We budgeted $362,245. Our total actual is $421,601, and that gives us over budget expenses of $61,385. And so that's why for the year, our net income is $31,000 to the red, because those two offset each other. Not 100%, but at least 50%. And the rest of this printout, pages 2 and 3, are the expenses broken down by category. And if you look, you will see that total animal care expenses is over $9,330. Cost of labor is $40,117, and medical expense is $15,146. And you add all three of those together, and you pretty much get your $64,000. That adds up to $64,593. And your question about the payroll, within that payroll, we've had a lot of overtime and people coming and going, because, as you all know, it's pretty common knowledge how much people can get for starting salaries around here, starting hourly wage. And a lot of our people, it was between, the minimum is $725, and then $850 is where most of our people were. And so as we've been able to get a good group, we've tried to raise them up. But down on page 3, you will see that we've put $20,000 in there to raise everybody up to at least $9 an hour, because that's pretty much the minimum starting salary of almost anything that you see displayed on these signs around here. And like I said, we had people that quit. And once you go into overtime, that's whenever your costs really can double, because, it's time and a half, plus all the payroll taxes that are associated. And of course, let's see, on our animal count, right now it's just 2,771, but if you take an average for November and December, we're on target to be 3,325, which is more than we had in 2020. So that right there is the reason that the medical expenses and the food costs are higher, because we've got more animals coming through there. And in answer to a question earlier, the way that we do this budget is we budget the expenses, and we do it by looking at last year's budget, sometimes the year before, and then, projecting anything that we know is going to be changed. And we come up with a total, and then we take the percentages, and that's where we come up with the numbers. Percentages based on number of animals submitted brought to the shelter. And that's really the basic way that we do it. And Lynette knows a lot more about how that's done per entity than I do, because, I'm the CPA accounting person, and I don't really get too much involved with the contracts. Any questions? And anytime someone wants to come and talk to me, I used to be down at 2212 West Main, but now I'm down over there on North Gun Barrel Lane. I'll get that right in a minute.
Can I throw a question out there to you?
Sure.
As a CPA, what's your opinion regarding asking questions regarding how finances are being spent or allocated? What's your general opinion professionally as a CPA regarding questions like this being asked?
Like,
how's the money being spent? Where's it going?
Well, I think that's legitimate, because, and that's why you see, I'm sure most of y'all have seen a profit and loss statement. it's generally not 2, sometimes 3 pages long.
Right.
And it's because we try to categorize everything so that we know where stuff is being spent. And I think that's legitimate. And quite frankly, the 990 that's filed every year is you can go out on the IRS.gov and get a copy of it. So, I mean, it's not that there's any secretive stuff about it. The only thing it gets a little confidential stuff is when you start talking about this entity versus that entity. And, maybe no one really cares that you know this or whatever, but some of them do.
And again, your opinion again, do you think it's appropriate that the people of Gun Barrel want to know how their money is being spent?
Oh, I do, yeah.
Do you think it's and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you think it's appropriate that they require of their council to ask these questions to make sure that we're being good, responsible custodians of their money?
I think so, yeah, I agree with that.
If anyone
That's
were
pretty much your job, I think.
kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah.
If someone were criticizing us for asking these questions, would you personally think that would be a good thing or a bad thing as a CPA whose job it is to simply review the numbers for a living?
I think that's legitimate, yes.
Again, I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth.
No,
I
you're
see
not.
things pretty simply in black and white when it comes to dollars and cents. And to the point of my questions, that's basically where this comes down to is I just want to make sure that I'm being a good custodian of the city's money. That's all this comes down to for me. Personally, I donate to the shelter. I have 3 rescue dogs. I believe that some of the people who've commented in the past want to make everybody on this council out to be a bunch of people who would run down dogs in the street if we had the opportunity to. And personally, I'll just throw this out there, even though you're the CPA, kind of hurts my feelings a little bit when people make those kind of comments when they know that they're not true for the sake of trying to make their point. Feels like a little arm twisting as opposed to getting questions answered in a responsible fashion like what this was supposed to be.
Well, and like I said, anytime that anyone has a question, you're perfectly welcome to come to my office or whatever you feel like you need to understand. It's a not-for-profit, so it's open to the public. That's just the way it works. That's what you trade off when you're not-for-profit.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
I have a question for Lynette. I noticed in one of your line items here, there's an educational line item. I sort of like to come at problems from different directions. What kind of education could we do for the people that live in our areas here to prevent all these animals to be turned in to begin with? Is it a spay and neuter program appropriate, or what causes all these animals to be running loose? What could we do to reduce that number?
I've brought that up before about proper city ordinances, controlling the number of animals that we have, spay and neuter laws. We send all the animals up north, and we often get asked, why do they do a better job? Because quite honestly, they have better controls with ordinances and controlling animal population with spay neutering, where unfortunately in our community, we don't do a good job with that.
And what does that mean? Is that a restriction placed on the citizens of areas of how many pets they can have, or what?
Well, in some cases, it could be. There may be a 5, limit the number of animals in a city to 5 or 6 or something of that nature. Also to register your animal. That way you know that, especially if the animal gets lost, that animal has a microchip and is registered. So there's things like that will help control the animal population.
Would you be willing to provide us some of those things that we could take a look at and see where we might be able to improve in those areas?
Most definitely. We had some communication a couple years ago about that, about getting together, and unfortunately on both parts, we didn't come through on getting back together. And to the council's point, we're in this together, and we would like you guys to reach out to us and ask more questions in regards to maybe having some type meetings. Sometimes this format back and forth, and I think to your point, it does feel like we're back and forth and we're on different sides because a lot of the questions are being asked and being brought up. And I'm just giving you my perception that maybe if our board and our directors and managers sit down and have meetings with you folks, which we're more than happy to do. We could probably clear up some of this, that it appears in the public that we're back and forth, back and forth.
I totally
And
agree
I
with
encourage
that.
that.
I agree completely with that. And Mr. LaRue, to your point, we have prepared a registration ordinance. Unfortunately, we don't have the money in place to administrate it as one of the, I mean, in talking with the city manager, where are we going to find someone that can administrate that ordinance? And so, however, Mr. City Manager, did we not reduce the number of animals per household, or was that in that ordinance as well?
Yes, we did. Mr. Yaws just asked me that question, and in the last year, we've reduced the number of animals per person, which was 4, to the number of animals per household, which is 4. So theoretically, hypothetically, if you had 4 adults living in one house, you could have 16 animals with our previous ordinance language. Now we've reduced it to 4 animals per household.
But
So we
again,
have
it's-
reduced that significantly.
Again, it's having the manpower to enforce that ordinance. We have one person that is working animal control, and so that makes it a little bit difficult. So, okay, any further questions of Ms. Ainsworth or Ms. Cryer?
Just on the subject of, this may be a better question for you. Given that the payroll constraints being what they were and y'all's budget gap being what it is, what has been the practice when y'all reach a point where you just don't have the manpower and overtime it's beyond use at this point or at a specific point? Have y'all been forced to close the doors at the shelter altogether and just not have anybody there because of that? Or have y'all just been able to remain open your normal hours before the pandemic all the way through present?
We restricted the number of people coming in to the facility. That helped for appointment only during COVID. We also had more volunteers. So if we get in a bind and we don't have enough staff to take care of things, we have volunteers. And some of the board members actually that are here tonight come and actually help out and actually have worked and mowed and edged, and those are the things that some of our board members do when we get in a bind.
Can't say enough about how much I appreciate volunteerism. Thank you for doing that. That means the world to me.
Any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Ainsworth. And I, too, appreciate the work that the volunteers do out there. Council, the agenda item is written to allow for a motion in any range of that council wishes to do. If you want to approve the amended contract as proposed by the Humane Society, if you want to do something different and do a lump sum money, if you know, whatever it is that you wish to do, I will now entertain a motion for that.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the addendum to the November 19th, 2020 agreement for animal shelter services. This agreement has been a priority and adopted by the City Council on a 5 to vote.
Let me get a second, Mr. Foster, before you go off.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Okay, now, the discussion, please. Mr. Foster?
Well, this agreement has already been looked at and approved 5-0 by the council previously. I think that it is definitely an expense, but it's also a need, and I strongly support the effort to go forward and approve it. Again.
Well, Mr. Foster, I'm going to have to, I'm not in disagreement with your motion. I am in disagreement with your comment. This amendment was not provided to council at the last meeting when we approved it.
What was the difference?
There was nothing written.
There was no amendment. That's why I vetoed it, because there was no further documentation to support. So we went to an audit, and the audit said it was to be one amount, and we were paying a greater amount. We would fail that piece of the audit. That was the reason for the veto. Let's be very clear on that. Any further comment?
Maybe we should ask our resident CPA what she feels about that. I'm pretty sure she would recommend that we have a contract that accurately depicts what we're literally paying for any services.
Well, our city treasurer and our city manager and our city attorney all agreed that we needed to, so yes.
Well, if Mickey Rainey says so, I'm pretty sure that means we better do it.
Any further comments or questions? I will ask for a vote from my left.
Yaws, yes.
Evans, yes.
LaRue, yes.
Mullins, yes.
Foster, yes.
Motion carries, and I will not veto it. Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, Ms. Cryer. I appreciate y'all coming in. I will suggest, Lynette, that in the future, when we have something coming up, if you just come in and visit with Jeff and explain it to him, we can save all of this and let him present it to council, and we can get through it a whole lot quicker and easier, especially when you have people who pretend they're on your board and that could answer questions and things of that nature. They just really do convolute everything and make it difficult for you and me, and we don't need that. So, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.